Hi guys, so we're going to try this one more time, and we're going to get this all up and running this time. So here we go. I'm going to just tag them in here to get them going. There we go. Tag Tim into this video. And see if we get them added in. So we have Dr. Boles coming on live from CNNH, and he's going to come and talk about the new program that he's the director of their Neurogenomics Program, and tell you all about their new program at this facility. So I'm going to introduce him and let him go and to answer your questions and how they will be bringing that to the Mito community and what that means to you and how that will help. Hold on one second. Okay. All right. So here we are. We're going to add. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very, thank you.
Are you Dr. Mintz?
I am Penina Mintz, correct.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Hi, I'm Jamie DeRosier from MitoAction.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. Sorry for the technical difficulties. That's the beauty of Facebook Live.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we had worked it out yesterday, but I was so happy to see you and get you on here and allowing us to do this video for our Mito community. And it's just, I went on your website, and I myself have 2 Mito children, and you guys are doing some amazing things for the Mito community, and I'm just so happy to share it with our community.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, so I did have, actually, I've written down some questions that were sent in to us for you, if you don't mind just having them. Can I ask them first?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you want to just introduce yourself so people know who you are. And
so my name is Penina Mintz. I'm the Executive Vice President of CNNH NeuroHealth. We are an organization, a multi-specialty group that cares for both children and adults with neurological disorders. It's a multi-specialty, including neurology, neuropsychology, behavioral psychology, and many other disciplines. And the concept is really to treat the patient holistically. It's what you would call precision medicine. So we're really looking at all aspects of patient care.
Oh, that's wonderful. So one of the questions was what makes CNNH so special and unique to this community?
It is unique because the approach is to look at any kind of disorder from the inside out. I guess we're looking for causation rather than symptoms. So in order to understand and to help the patient, we really need to identify the exact kind of profile from all aspects, be it from neurological concerns, neuropsychological, neurophysiological, genetic, pharmacogenetics, and so on. And once we do the complete assessment process, then we're able to target our treatment modalities to be able to really help the patient in a complete way. So it's very much our goal is not so much the diagnostic piece, but rather can we really help the patient and change their quality of life and bring them the results that they're looking for. So if we can accomplish that, then we've done our job correctly. So our goal is really to help the patient. That's why they're coming to us. And that's what really why we're here.
Yeah. So I did see on your website that you are really a full service where you're just really just from in the clinic into the treatment to at home where you're bringing it full circle. So you really try and care for the patient full circle and make sure that they have care at home and care at your facility. So I think that's just a wonderful thing that you're involving.
Right. So many times in these disorders, there's kind of artificial division between behavioral health sciences and medical sciences. And what we are doing is understanding that it's only one brain, right? And all kind of that brain controls pretty much all of our functioning, be it the physical functioning, the cognitive functioning, and so on. So our purpose is really to help to understand the brain, how it functions, and really allow that kind of look out for total health or brain health. And if we do that, then we can control obviously the overall health of the patient. So it's really, really important to also to educate the patient about the complexity of the brain and what needs to get done as far as be it to look out for overall maintenance of proper brain functions. There's a lot that goes into it, and I think that why it is required collaborative model of many clinicians to really surround the patient with all types of different expertise in those different disciplines. So not one clinician can really just transform that patient, but you need really a team approach, a collaborative team approach to figure out the in and out of understanding the condition and really what do we do about it? How can we help the patient?
Mm-hmm. So I think you touched on the treatment approach. So what's some of the services beyond neurogenomics that does it have that Mito patients and families could benefit from at your facility?
So again, I think neurology or neurological examination is kind of the base and the foundation where you understand the entire nervous system, but beyond your nervous system is really understanding all other systems. So on the medical neurological exam that you come to get done here, we really examine all your systems. And then the other disciplines, neuropsychology, actually correlates your brain structure to your brain function. So you need those kind of informatics, neuropsychologically and cognitively, how are we functioning? And then you have additional discipline like neurotechnology, where we have the high density EEG, where it measures our electrical activity of the neuronal firings. So we need to understand, how the brain function electronically, and to have that insight is very important, especially for patients that have any kind of underlying epilepsy conditions and so on, as well as additional disciplines such as behavioral sciences, creative arts therapies. So really kind of looking at not just pharmacologically how to help the patient, but really help the patient from all aspects. Therapeutically, we have cognitive behavioral therapy and other aspects of natural modalities of helping the patients to achieve kind of brain health and quality of life.
So using other therapies outside of the medicines to kind of build their structure in their brains to help them have more of a healthy, I'm trying to speak in a way that a mom understands. So in a way that I ask my doctors all the time to speak to me in a way that I can understand. So I always try and say, it's so my daughter's brain can get a little bit more activity on another way than a med giving it to her. So she can get a healthy way of getting almost like an exercise to her brain that's not coming from a med. So she can get like a creative way of doing it through therapies like doing things with like STEM projects, like she has STEM things where she does ribbon activities and things like that. So she does those types of things to keep the brain active and give it a little healthy exercise.
Absolutely. So the brain is a plastic organ, and it requires a lot of different stimulations, right, to learn. It's learning every second and changes every second. So it's really important for us to get this brain. First of all, the natural kind of maintenance is sleep, right? Sleep, good nutrition, good hydration, and so on. So it's very natural modalities that we can keep that brain operating in the best way. So pharmacology is only needed, as in a very limited approach, but really to educate the patient and the parent of how to help yourself have true kind of health throughout and not just rely on medications.
Right. Yes, I agree. I think the last question was, can patients pick and choose their services that they need?
Correct. So you can basically use any one of our services as a standalone. You can use the high density EEG as a standalone test. You do not need to use any other services here. So any of our services can be done by itself, be it the neuropsychological services. A lot of school districts and patients come to us just for neuropsychological evaluations. The same goes for behavioral services or creative arts services. So you can use any one of those disciplines as a standalone service. Obviously, if you need to use all the services, we're here for you, but any one of those services is available as a standalone. A lot of our colleagues refer to those services and use for their patients, so anyone can use any of the services at any given time.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Yes, thank you, Susan. Hi, Dr. Boles.
Hi, I think we'll need to readjust that. Okay.
Cutting off top of your head there.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of different weather in New Jersey compared to California, huh?
Yes, it's quite different.
It's a lot colder.
Yes. There was ice on the car. I'm not used to that at all.
Yeah. No. So we want to thank you for taking the time to come out and making time for our patients. Done multiple times. And I just want to say that you're coming on because this is your new program that you've developed at CNNH. It's a new program for neurogenomics that you have done with CNNH and developed this program with them. And if you want to start, what is that made you develop this program with them? What intent you start this with them?
Well, the reason I chose this group is I've been working with them in neurogenomics for about 5 years. When I was the director of Cortigen, they were our best clients, our best customers, and we went through hundreds of cases together. And they have a large neurology group, and genetics is very highly integrated in that group. So it wasn't me going to a group and saying, hey, there's DNA, there's genetics, you got to do this. I chose a group to make this program in one that had already been doing it for 5 years and having success at it. So everyone here is very interested in genetics and knows that genetics is important, and it's already revolutionized the way that they practice medicine. Mm-hmm. Also, I mean, being on the East Coast makes a difference. I do appreciate the families that come all the way out to California to visit me. I know that that's very difficult, particularly with affected children. Having something on the other side of the country where there's a lot more people made a lot of sense, so that there's 2 different places on opposite corners to some degree. And also, I love the people here, working with them. I've been working with them for years, and I thought that they were great. Also, the last part of that is the multidisciplinary nature. Is if we have a disease and we have a diagnosis, then they have everything here. Everything's in this one place to be able to handle it and be able to do it right.
That's awesome. So we had a bunch of questions that came in for you about this new program that you have started. So they wanted to know, the first one was, how does the practice of neurogenetics fit into this practice? And I think you kind of just touched on that a little bit, but how does this fit into this practice? Like, how did this fit into here?
I've been doing neurogenetics for a quarter century. I mean, neurogenetics is a name that, I mean, it doesn't exist like any particular, there's no training programs or anything for it. It's half of them are geneticists with an interest in neurology, and half of them are neurologists with an interest in genetics. And the type of disorders that I deal with are mostly in the neurological category. Even things like cyclic vomiting syndrome, it's really the nerves that are causing the issue. It's really the brain, it's the organ of that, not the gut. So, and the enteric nervous system as well. So it really fit in very well because they were doing neurogenetics and I'm doing neurogenetics.
Mm-hmm. We just had a question come in. Will you be periodically seeing patients in person in New Jersey now?
Probably. I just saw 2 yesterday.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
We're working on setting that up. I'm not going to be here a whole lot of the time because I have 3 minor children at home. But we'll be seeing some patients here in person, and certainly I'll be seeing patients by telemedicine which I've been doing now quite extensively the last year. It really doesn't matter that much if it's 95% the same as seeing them in person, I'd say.
Yeah, that was one of the questions, is the telemedicine. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is? Is that an option for only the New Jersey patients? Is that how would people be able to get that? Or is that an option for them?
Well, the telemedicine, well, there's all the state laws, and what each state is different. In New Jersey, telemedicine is fine, but you have to be in a certain, there's a lot of equipment and HIPAA requirements and everything, and it's written in the law quite extensively. So we have a telemedicine room that I usually show up there virtually, but I was there yesterday for a couple of patients. And in this telemedicine room, they have all the equipment and everything. And it was Dr. Mintz, who is the husband of Panina, as well as the founder and the main neurologist here. And he was with me in the room in person instead of virtually this time with the family, and that we were able to see the patient together. So in New Jersey, it happens here at CNNH. I have also been seeing patients virtually in their own home in Florida, and I've been seeing them in the office of Dr. Corbier in South Carolina.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, we just got a few questions, and someone said we would be able eventually to see people in other countries.
It's very difficult to do that because of the legal situation. I do have patients from other countries. Unfortunately, they have to come to see me. They've been coming to California to see me, and then we can follow up somewhat on the internet. But it is, unfortunately, I don't have a license in any other country. I have a license in 6 states now. I just added Arizona, so I'm going to be starting some telemedicine there. But in other countries, it becomes much more difficult. For one, I'd have to go like to medical school there. So that's a little bit difficult.
And again, you have three young children, so they need to stay in California. Could you explain what telemedicine is?
Oh, well, it's pretty much the same as regular medicine. I find that it's really the same. I mean, when normally I'd be on a desk in front of me with the laptop and between me and the patient, and I'd be looking over the laptop to see the family on the other side of the room. In telemedicine, the family is in the laptop. So there's a camera, and I mean, we just use Skype when I'm not doing it from telemedicine from CNNH. And so we have a visual, and I do interview the child. I talk to the child and look at the child and examine the child as necessary. And the whole thing's right there. I can actually show my screen to them so I can show them what I'm working on. I mean, I can't listen to the heart, but that's not really a big part of genetics anyway. It's really 95% the same. Wow.
That's I think that's a huge benefit to families that in some areas, they don't have a mito specialist in some of their areas, and that they can have that specialist right there to them.
We've also freeweighted a few times where they're like, we'll be a parent on a business trip or lives elsewhere, and they can reach in, and so that we're all connected to each other. We can be in 3 different states.
Yeah. Somebody wants to know, which 6 states are you licensed in?
Well, right here, we're in the Philadelphia area, so I'm licensed on both sides of the river in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. South Carolina, Florida, California, of course, and I just added Arizona.
Wow. So the questions are just coming. There's a bunch of questions coming in, but I'm going to go back to the ones that I had down here. So how could patients find out if they can come to the facility, and how can they find out if they can come to the facility, and how can they set up an appointment with you? Which is kind of like the same. You just said that they...
Yeah, there's me and then there's me. My private practice is separate at this point. So if they're interested in my private practice, which would be in California and telemedicine to Florida at this point, then they would email me at my private practice address, Dr. Boles, DRBOLES @molecularmito.com. If they're interested in telemedicine in other states, if they're interested in coming to CNNH, or if they're interested in the peer-to-peer, which I'll get to, then they would contact Daphne, who's here, who's hiding in the corner here. Come on over here. She's our coordinator.
Hi, Daphne.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You gotta love live. You're always just gonna be pulled right out. So, well, yeah, I think that's great. So if you want to send that information, we can also put it up on this page too with the information.
So your email is D.
Yeah, my email address is dvaradi@cnnh.org, but we'll send that over so you can post that.
Yep, I'll put in the email address in the Tracy.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I said, so the next question was Dr. Boles. Can you tell us how personalized interpretation of the complex DNA sequencing data is useful for physicians, healthcare providers, and patients and families?
Oh, yes, I could speak an hour and only touch the surface of that. Actually, I spent the last hour to a group of people on that. I could say it's totally revolutionized my practice. It's not anywhere near the same as it was before. Having that information in front of me, and now we have whole genome information, all 3 billion nucleotides, makes a huge difference in terms of interpretation. There's the laboratory report, and of course, and I read that and everything, but I was a medical director of a laboratory for 5 years, 6 years actually, because I had. And it's hard if you only have the medical records, and often you don't have the full medical records. But now I know the patient pretty well because I've interviewed the patient, I've interviewed the family, I've looked at the medical records, and I can always ask questions. I see this gene, has anyone in the family had this problem, or does the child have this particular sleep issue, or I can take a look to see if the nose is a little bit short, or something like that. And that makes a lot of difference, because even though I think that I take very extensive notes and very extensive family histories and everything, anyone who sat in my office for 4 hours will say yes, there's a lot of things I didn't get. And having access, having the patient in front of me and be able to get that information, often with the cell phone and calling family members as to what they might have, it really connects the DNA to the patient and to the disease. And so my specialty is that functional disorders like cyclic vomiting syndrome, migraine, chronic fatigue, and the neurodevelopmental disorders, in particular autism, but some of the others as well. In those areas in which I understand the disease, and I've seen hundreds of patients, thousands of patients with, and I have the family, and I have their entire DNA sequence in front of me, that information is really powerful together when it's all together. Independently, each one is just a bunch of data, but together it tells a story. It makes a lot of difference. I mean, how often do we find DNA sequences that are likely related to disease? The vast majority. It's definitely over 80%. How many, but we can't prove it, because to prove it would require an entire research study, which you can't do on every single patient. We do tests when they're non-invasive and there's something that we can do, but we can't do that all the time. So, I mean, the proof is in the treatment. So what often is we'll get candidate variants. So I might have 10 variants that I have on my computer in front of me that I've looked at it before that I think fit. Then I talk to the family, and maybe I narrow it down to 6, because 4 of them are really out there, really don't fit that well. So I look at those 6 variants and say, which ones are more likely, which ones are less, which ones have benign therapies that we can figure out, and of those, which ones make sense. So we discuss the pros and cons of each therapy, and then come up with a plan. And if one of those makes a difference, that's the way it's supposed to work. So we may have 4 variants. 2 of them may make sense in terms of a treatment. We treat for both, and one of them works and one of them doesn't. That's what success is in the age of personalized medicine. I'd say the data has really been over the last year here in the peer-to-peer system and in my private practice, is about 50% have a significant improvement based upon the DNA. So they may have seen me for years and they've already been on therapies, but then the DNA makes a difference to help about 50% of them to get better. And most of those are moderately improved. If they're just mildly improved, well, it might make a difference. Maybe I like it, but I don't know if it's making a difference. I'll stay with it. I call that mild. I'm not counting those. I'm talking moderate is that it seems to make a difference. Things are much better. The family is happy about it, and they're pretty sure that it helps. A lot of times we take them off of it and put them back on, and take them off and put them back on if appropriate, to make sure that it really is making a difference. Once in a while, maybe 10%, it makes a dramatic difference. There have been cases in which intelligence and cognitive skills have increased markedly, that speech has increased markedly, been other cases in which behavior is markedly improved or that pain is completely resolved. Maybe, you know, when pain is significantly improved, but it's still there, that's moderate. But when it's totally gone, that's you know, maybe 10, 20% or so have had dramatic. So it doesn't help everybody, but it helps a lot of people.
But a significant amount, 80% is a...
Yeah, it's a significant amount.
Yeah, so that's a game-changing amount of people. So, yeah. So if we see that, the next one would be if we see a full service program from patients for testing to a home services, would you tell us, the full service program for the patients for when now you guys are doing like helping with the homes, with the IEPs and the creative services like we had talked to Dr. Mintz about, with the ways that you guys do other types of creative stuff at home where you guys do like the cultural development, staff training, and the parent training. Are you guys part of that as well, or is that all developed from CNNH?
Well, that's all for CNNH. I mean, yeah. In California, certainly a lot of the families do benefit from those, and they're generally for their pediatrician or a developmental pediatrician or somebody else, or for one of the centers or something. But I mean, in CNNH, they have everything together in that one place.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
Again, the Neurogenetics Program, about half of it is in CNNH, about half of it are patients that are here, that are being seen here, and they can have all their services here if they want. And about half of them are outside of New Jersey, all over the country, in which I get on the telephone, telemedicine, with the physicians and discuss the situation with the physicians. And then, of course, they have local resources. If I have a medical license in the state, then the family is certainly invited if the physician's okay with it. They almost always are, about being in the physician's office, and then I can ask them additional questions, and I can explain to the family what I think the variants are instead of relying on the doctor to do that. And that's always something that I like to do. If the family is currently in a state in which I don't have a medical license, it's illegal, and so I don't go there. But so sometimes we've had families travel. That happened last week, is that a family traveled to a state that I have a medical license they had, and hooked up with me there.
Yeah, I just saw someone ask that question, said, I live on the border of Pennsylvania. If I came to Pennsylvania and could somehow get an appointment with you, would that be possible? So
I don't have at this point a medical group that I work with in Pennsylvania. So if that family found somebody who's willing to have me join virtually in, I would be happy to do that. Okay. I mean, okay, coming from the West Coast, Pennsylvania is a tiny state. I know on the East Coast it says a long state, but if they wanted to drive across the state to New Jersey, of course, that would be one option. Another option would be to find somebody I assume it's Western Pennsylvania, probably they're talking about.
Right. So we were talking a lot about the genetic testing, and in the genetic testing, if you identify or confirm a diagnosis or uncover a biological cause to end the diagnostic journey, that one that everyone's on, can you avoid additional unnecessary testing?
I would say about 50% of the time that we find something that is significantly enough related to the disease that we can say we found the cause or a large part of the cause. I know this might be revolutionary to some people and old hat for others, but most of you probably don't have a cause for your disease. You have multiple causes or multiple contributing factors. Some people do have a monogenic cause. This is the disease. This is why you have it. Maybe 30% of my patients do. And 70% are polygenic and multifactorial. I mean, don't forget the environmental part of that. Environment's also important. So I'd like to say about genetics is that the hand that you're dealt with in a poker game, that's your genetic endowment. But how you play the hand is environment and medical care and good living. I mean, a single hand by an expert poker player can be a much better, it can win versus an amateur might lose on the same hand. Obviously, some hands of cards are much better than others to win on. But it really, genetic endowment is what you're capable of, is what the risks are. It doesn't say it's going to happen. Right. I mean, so you have to put that into comparison. And I'm so far off your question, I've forgotten it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I said if you had found your diagnostic journey and you actually found the biological cause.
Oh, additional, yeah. If you find, well, okay, that's a really good question, because if you find the major biological cause, sometimes that's not treatable, but sometimes the modifying factors are treatable. I mean, there's a concept of homeostasis everyone's heard about, but the body is redundant. I mean, if something goes wrong, there's a lot of other processes that go in there to try to mitigate disease, to try to make the individual functional. And it's only when those don't work is that you have disease, and that particularly you have progressive disease. And it may be that there's a very significant disorder that may not be that treatable or treatable at all, but some of the modifying genetic factors might be treatable. So sometimes we do find people that say, you know, this is a disease. They either come in with a diagnosis or we figure it out on DNA. And they say, okay, well, this may be 50, this may be even 75% of the disease, but it's not 100%. Let's see if we can find some treatable modifiers. And sometimes that makes a big difference. Sometimes we can find modifiers that are treatable. I would say that once you have a diagnosis, you probably don't need to do invasive testing. It's unlikely. The last time that I recommended invasive tests, I can't even remember. DNA we get from saliva, and so you can get it from blood if you want to, but most kids, given the choice of the saliva stick or the needle, choose that, you know, choose appropriately.
Right.
if you can't, we can get blood, but usually we do like a mouth swab, or you just spit into a cup or something. So testing has become a lot easier, as well as cheaper and more effective.
I want to circle back to when you said environmental things you can do. What are environmental things you could do to kind of increase your life quality? I guess maybe with your poker hand, as you had mentioned.
Okay. Well, some of it is really easy, and they're the stuff that everyone knows about: clean living, getting enough sleep, getting good quality sleep, exercising, eating right, making sure you get enough protein, making sure that you don't fast, that you have enough fruits and vegetables, antioxidants, nutritional support in terms of antioxidants for many of the conditions, particularly in the mito area. A lot of that, you know, not drinking excessively, not smoking at all, or not taking drugs. I mean, you know, there's a lot of other things. A lot of it is just clean living, taking control of your stress. Those things make a big difference in physiology, and that's why they're recommended, and that's why they do that. But we're talking 23,000 genes, and we're talking 3 billion base pairs, and every one's an individual. A lot of times in the genetic testing, we find that somebody is, say, particularly sensitive to the type of anticholinesterase inhibitors that are in like Raid and other types of bug sprays, poisons, or they may be very sensitive to a particular drug, or they may be very sensitive to some other environmental component. And then we can say, well, you know, you need to be more careful about avoiding that component. So sometimes genetics can tell you what your environmental vulnerabilities are. Other times it'll tell us what to do. If there's a defect in an enzyme which recycles biotin, then we can use very high doses of biotin. If there's a defect in the transport system for creatine into the brain, we can use very high doses of creatine. So I can go on and on about examples, but so it's very complex, and you really need to do the genetics to figure it out.
Is that something that genetic testing at CNNH could tell you? Is that something that you guys offer in the testing, could tell you what type of supplements and vitamins and things that you could take that could tell you the diet that you should be on to help you have those better?
One thing I should mention is that we don't do genetic testing here. I mean, I have worked for many labs in the past. People might know me associated with various labs. I'm a free agent now. I negotiate rates with labs all over the world. So I go with the best labs in the world with high quality, low prices, good turnaround, and then make them negotiate rates with. And said, well, you know, that lab over there, they're doing it for 800 and you're doing it for 900. You know, maybe you ought to consider decreasing before we take you. So we can negotiate really low rates. So the rates of sequencing that we can get are much lower. And of course, I know the quality of the lab and that they work with us well. So, I mean, we also, for most patients with autism in particular, we sequence everything. We do whole genome sequencing. That's what we order. I'm starting to order that on everyone, because you want to get a mitochondrial DNA, and you want to get a microarray, and you want to get an exome. And when you spend those 3 tests, genome is cheaper. So you do genome, you get 50 times the amount of sequencing. You get an exome, plus you get all the other things for cheaper. So it's like, well, if you get more for less, why not? So we're pretty much in the last month, we switched to Genome. So we're sequencing every single nucleotide, so we have everything. There's nothing not to say we understand everything, that will take probably 1,000 years, but we have it all.
Right. So there's more data to look through to get those sequences to help give more information to start to tell the patient more of their story.
It is a lot of data. Even just some sequence, which is only 2%, it crashes my computer constantly. I have to shut down the computer, open it up, and have that sequence in front of me and nothing else. If I have two of the sequences open at the same time, it really wreaks havoc. That's an exome sequence. With a genome sequence 50 times larger, we can't send it by the internet. They have to mail a hard drive, but what we do now is through the internet, we access one of the major computers in the world, and that they download it to that. So it's like we're in a Google computer or something like that, that we can see it there, because it literally takes half a hard drive of data for one genome.
Yep. Question was sent to us, if someone had their genetic testing, is there any way that they could get it to you for you to review it?
We do a lot of that. We do it at all different stages. On the back end, we can have, if a test has been done before, and it's a good test and they have the data, you can request that the test results, the actual genetic sequence, be sent to us. Often they mail a hard drive to us. Sometimes they'll send it through the internet to a center, and that we can access it there. So if it was a good test that was done somewhere, there's no need to do it again, that we can access that data and look at it. It's not often on the report. So we'll look at the report, sure, but most of the diagnoses that are made, and particularly most of the treatments, are based upon a deep dive of the sequences. That's only possible when I really know the patient well, after having an evaluation. Okay. On the other side, a lot of physicians have no idea what to order, how to order it, what lab to order it. They can send a paragraph or so, a couple paragraphs in the patient, and I can give them advice as to what to order. And then since we're involved, we can use our negotiated low rates. And so that we can help them from the very beginning to make sure that the right test is ordered. There's a lot of tests out there that are no good. There's a lot of tests that are toys. 23andMe and Ancestry and all those are fun, but they're toys. They have 1/1,000,000th of sequencing we do, literally 1/1,000,000th. Of the amount of sequencing. So you really can't do it on that. And if it was done 5 years ago, it was done by techniques that we really can't use because it's not that it's not very good. But if you had 2 years ago, you had a whole exome, yeah, we can work with that. Most labs, some will not send us the data. Most labs will. Okay.
So, with that type of data, if somebody, people didn't know that if we have that resource if they wanted to reach out to us and say, my doctor doesn't really know what to order when we're doing our genetic testing, could we, reach out to Dr. Boles or somehow get in touch with you to ask the doctor for some, preferences on our testing to order? Maybe we could use the resources we have here, maybe to reach out to you to see if maybe you could guide them.
It's about half the time the family reaches out to me, about half the time the physician reaches out. I'd say the family's more than half. The family can reach out if they're interested in the peer-to-peer in which their doctor talks to me on the telephone. That would be Daphne. And if they're interested in CNNH, that would be Daphne. If they're interested in my private practice in California, that would be me. The physician or the family can just email us.
So the peer-to-peer program, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, what that is not everyone can easily get to New Jersey or to California. I realize that, and we want to be able to help people throughout the country. And we have done this international. We already had one patient in Israel, so we're already doing it international. So we really can do the whole world now. The way that it works is that a physician has to sign up for it, and then there's of course, there's legalese and everything from the sign. And it's just basically that they're the one that's responsible. I'm doing it in a state generally, which I'm not licensed. And so I talk to them. We discuss it peer-to-peer, doctor to doctor. We discuss the situation, and then it's up to them. They're not my patients, so I'm not breaking any state laws. Practicing medicine without a license, that's a serious crime. So I try to do as much as I can within the letter and the purpose of the law. And so I get the laboratory results, I take a look at it, and then I discuss with the physician. The physician tells me about the patient. I talk about the sequences. We discuss back and forth and discuss how the sequences can meet with how they interact with the family, with the patient, with the disease, with the medications that have been tried so far. It's not quite as good as if it's in a state that I'm licensed and the family's there to ask questions and to listen to it. But if you can't get to a state that I'm licensed, and it works pretty well. Many of the doctors that we've been doing it with are neurologists, pediatric neurologists that have been doing this, have done, in some cases, hundreds of sequences with me, are very savvy on genetics now and on genetic testing, and then we can discuss it, and then they know what to talk to the family and answer questions. There's several different doctors across the country I'm working with. In particular, there's Dr. Corbier in South Carolina in the Charlotte area. He's one of our good clients, and I do that constantly with him. So if someone's in that neck of the woods, that they can come to him.
Awesome. What impact do you think that this program will have on bridging the gaps for the Mito Neurogenomic Program?
Is that written here or something? I didn't hear that.
No, I have written it here. So
okay. Can you say that?
What impact do you think this will have on the Mito community, this new CNNH program, with the telemedicine and the new genetic test, the new genetic way of reading the genetic testing and being able to use more of the data to be able to do the diet and the supplements and the vitamins and really like do a full service program for patients with neuro needs?
Well, I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years now, but I mean, we were doing it at first with Cortigen and then later Lineagen, and then now I said I use a lot of different laboratories. The technology keeps increasing dramatically, so every year what we did before is completely obsolete. Now we're doing the whole genome, so hopefully information and knowledge will increase, but there's no more to sequence than everything. So it's not like next year we'll want to do something better. We got it all. Right. It's just on the computer. It's right there for us to look at. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally, it's an Excel sheet that's on the computer in front of me, and I have every variant on there, and I can look at it. It's really kind of cool on that. I wish this system allowed me to like send a slide and show you what it looks like, but it is really cool. That's I have to say. It's what I've wanted to do. We have the whole genome in front of us. Now we just have to understand it. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. It really does make a difference. The main thing we're doing is recovering the gap. Most physicians out there really don't know much about genetics. And even the ones that are genetic savvy, they don't know what test to order. It changes month by month. They don't know what labs. They don't know how to get it through insurance, which changes constantly. They don't know how to interpret the results. And they order from a lab and they get a result and they don't know how to read the result. And there's no way that they can really go through the genomics and look at every variant. That's a very, very specialized ability, knowledge to do that. I developed that knowledge out of working with laboratories for up to 10 years, about being a director and doing literally tens of thousands of these. So it's something that's not easy to train up to either. And we fill in the gap between the physician who knows the patient and knows the family and is going to treat the patient and needs to be a part of the equation, and then the genetics, the genetic knowledge, the being able to read the genome. The two of those are really separate in most cases. You get a report and the physician reads the report and doesn't know what to do. We fill the gap between those, either in person or in CNNH or in California in my practice, or in the peer-to-peer system, which we're on the telephone and we discuss it open back and forth about the patient and the sequences. So we connect those two.
Nice. Does the clinic actually take insurance, or is it does that clinic take insurance right now?
No, it's a very good question. In regarding insurance, if it's new, the insurance companies won't pay for it.
Okay.
And when they start paying for what we're doing, we're going to be doing something else. Right? Because we're always on the cutting edge. If I don't want to fall behind and just become one of these old doctors that's doing something 20 years ago or something. I want to make sure that my patients always have the best. So unfortunately, the way the system works is that there's probably going to be some cash payment, and it's probably going to be for a while. So in CNNH, when patients come here, they do insurance. They take many different insurance plans. For the sequencing itself, I'd say about half of the patients are getting the insurance to pay for the sequencing. There may be like $100 copay or something, and then there's always a deductible. But I'd say that half the time the insurance company is covering the sequencing. Mm-hmm. We're trying to improve that, and we're certainly trying to collect data to show that the sequencing makes a big difference. But I'd say our odds are about 50-50. And you don't know which one. Sometimes a great insurance will deny something. Sometimes what you consider an awful insurance will just pay the whole amount. You never know. It's hit and miss as to whoever reads the thing. It does matter if you use the codes right. It does matter if you write a letter of medical necessity, and we do these things. But the interpretation in which we go through hours of looking at all of the genome and talk to the family, that insurance companies are not paying for that now. We are trying to get on network for those sorts of services, but at this point that it is not there. So the way that I usually do is the best laboratories are offering, they run through insurance and they have great cash prices. So that means it's one-stop shopping. So we run through insurance first, unless there's a family that says, I know that they'll deny, I don't even want insurance involved in that, we'll just do the cash. Maybe 10% of families do that. I'd say 90% say, yeah, we might as well at least bother the insurance company to have to say a denial. At the very least, to make them go through the 5 seconds it takes them to stamp denial on it. So, so it goes through the insurance company, and many of them will accept it or they will on appeal. And if they don't, and it says, okay, they're not going to pay for it, this is the cash price, we went to a company that has a very low cash price. Cash prices have gone down dramatically. Exon prices are below 1,000 now for all 23,000 genes. 3 years ago, we were talking 18,000 for 3,000 genes. Yeah. Now we can do for all 23,000 genes for under 1,000. Whole genome is 1,800 for the best companies that give us the best data. There are some companies out there that have decreased the price even further that we're going to be looking into. But it's not just getting the data, it's making sure that it's high quality data that's computer literate, that we can actually look at and we can actually interpret. Okay. So those are important things. But prices are definitely coming down. And then interpretation costs are between $200 and $1,000, depending on if we're helping someone read a positive microarray on one side versus if we're reading an entire genome on the other side. So prices have come down. I mean, you can do a full genome analysis and a full interpretation. The Porsche or the Lamborghini for $2,800 today, the sequencing and the interpretation. And the insurance company would likely pay for more than half of that. So the worst case scenarios are not nearly as bad as they were before. People are thinking, oh, that's going to be $20,000. Yeah, 2 years ago it would have been, but not today.
Okay. Oh, that's wonderful news. I just saw someone said that's wonderful. The genetic testing was much less than when they tried to get it done years ago. So that's a big change in the price that I know years ago. So
it keeps coming down. I don't expect it to come down too much more because the interpretation costs are now larger than they may come down a little bit. They can't come down below zero, obviously. So, but they are. And the other thing is people saying, well, we'll wait until the tests get better, but you can keep doing that and keep waiting and keep waiting. They're always going to be better. This is actually a good time to do testing because we do whole genome now. So it won't be next year I'm asking you to do another test, which I have almost every year so far. Is every year is, oh, that was done last year. That's obsolete. We got the better test here. But now we're doing the whole thing. So no excuse not to do it now.
So is there anything that you think that about this new NeuroGenome program that we have not covered in the questions that were asked today that you wanted to talk about?
Did I cover everything? Is there anything you want? I didn't miss anything?
I don't think so.
I think that we covered. I think that we, one thing is that in functional disease, disorders of that are often considered to be not real or psychiatric or stress-induced. It can be anything from depression and anxiety to vomiting, nausea, chronic pain, chronic fatigue. I mean, you just name it, itching, anything like that. We're finding really good results and with treatable results in functional disease. If you have many functional symptoms, more than half of them, we're finding genes that are related to that. And I mean, particularly in patients that haven't done very much sequencing, haven't done very much in terms of testing. It's not like ones that have already thrown the book at them or whatever. They have they haven't done very much. I mean, the vast majority of them we're finding improvements in. So there's a lot better understanding of the biology, of the genetics of these conditions. They are becoming much more understandable. And it's not mainstream yet, but we're getting there.
So there's becoming a link to make the symptoms have a link to something to make people feel justified and that there's something explaining why they feel the way they feel.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the most common are channelopathies, the defects in ion channels. The channels are leaking. They may leak calcium, it may be potassium or sodium. It's different in each case, but they cause the neurons to fire when they shouldn't fire. They become twitchy. So you get nausea and you get pain and you get symptoms that normally wouldn't be there because the nerves are twitchy. And we can find that on genetic testing and we can treat that if we know which channel it is. Sometimes it's mitochondrial genes. Frequently we find mitochondrialopathies or abnormalities, and then we can treat that with antioxidants and mitochondrial targeted cocktails. Sometimes it's neurotransmitters. I mean, it varies, but I mean, those would be the most common ones. But there's maybe 3 or 4 pathways that are most of those patients.
So I had one more question that kept popping up. People were asking if you would suggest if you do the muscle biopsy over the genetic testing.
I can't remember the last time I did a muscle biopsy. It might have been 8 years ago. That might answer it in and of itself. There are situations, I mean, if you do the genetic testing, you find nothing and the muscle is very severely affected and getting worse over time. I would recommend a muscle biopsy in those cases, but those are pretty rare. We usually can figure out myopathies, not everyone. But I mean, I think the genetic tests are much more important to do first. They're more powerful, they're cheaper, they're certainly less invasive.
Yeah, less painful.
Yes. And a lot cheaper. Muscle biopsy can be $20,000 when you've done the anesthesia and the surgeon and the hospital and everything, and then you have all of the tests to send out. Yeah. No, the testing is very, very cheap compared to muscle biopsy. Okay.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and doing this Q&A and answering all the questions, and for CNNH for sharing their facility and their time and setting this up and allowing you to break away from your busy schedule to jump on here and dealing with our little technical issues when we started this all out. And I'm sure that there'll be people jumping on and asking questions. And it looks like all the feedback on here is everyone's so excited to hear about the facility, and they're excited to hear about the costs of the genetic testing going down and continue to go down. The telemedicine is something that I think it's pretty cool if we could see some of that room that you explained at the facility. That sounds pretty amazing, where you talked about there was a room that you went in at the New Jersey site. That's a pretty cool spot that you had showed. Maybe if people wanted to come there and view the facility, could they come by and view the facility if they're in the area?
I don't see why not. Have people done that? Yeah. If they want to come here and visit.
Yeah, I mean, this is the telemedicine room.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Hearing yes.
So if people want to come out and check out the CNNH facility and go out and take a tour and maybe see if this is a place that fits for you, definitely go out and check it out. The link to the site is going to be in the comments below, and I will also put the email address for Dr. Boles, for Daphne, for everything that was mentioned in this video, so nobody will miss anything. And we want to thank Dr. Boles, CNNH, Dr. Mintz, for their time, and wish everybody a happy holiday. Dr. Boles, a safe flight back to California.
Thank you.
And get that sunshine and your family. And thank you so much. Do you have anything else you wanted to say? Sorry.
No, that's just okay.
But thank you so much. Bye-bye.